Life is never just one fight. It's a series of battles that keep testing us in new ways.
The 2025 film One Battle After Another captures this cycle, where every small victory is followed by another challenge waiting in the shadows.
Ultimately, one battle after another moves us to consider whether the battles of yesterday ever really end or whether they simply return in new disguises.
But just one step deeper is the real question the film forces us to ask. Are we ever truly free of the systems that oppress us? Or are we just fighting one battle after another? This is a non-spoiler review followed by a spoiler discussion of One Battle After Another.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. As we mentioned, this is a spoiler and non-spoiler review, and so we'll let you know when you can hop off the call if you don't want this film spoiled for you. But for now, you can stick around and listen to information about this movie. For now, you can just stick around. Background information on this movie. So it was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and it was inspired by the 1999 novel Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. And let me just say up front, the trailer after seeing the movie was terrible.
The trailer sucked. So yeah.
It was terrible in terms of predicting it, because if you watch the trailer, you would think, oh, this movie is just about some has-been guy who's going to do some type of Ocean's 11 type of, get the old gang back together.
Whatever.
Yeah, the trope we've seen a million times. It is not that.
I just thought it was just a regular old action movie. Really.
Yes. So, but it wasn't. And so I think that to their defense, I think it's hard to capture what this movie is about exactly, I
don't think it is, because they didn't really show in the trailer about any of the ideological things. Basically, you have this far left group who had this stuff going on in the past, and then it trickled on into the future. I watched the trailer. I didn't know nothing about that. So of course, you're not going to get me out, but what they were trying to do is, ironically, because you had this sort of a left-wing group, right, you didn't want to piss off people on the right so that they could still go and want to see the film, even though it's about folks on the real far left, not the fake far left. That's really what it was.
So you told me about an article that you saw that was a review. It was after we actually saw the movie, a review of this film. And it was by Katie Walsh in the Chicago Tribune. And here's a quote from what she said, and I thought it really captured it. She said, Paul Thomas Anderson has made the film of the year with the incendiary and frequently quite funny One Battle After Another, which just happens to be a searing indictment of this particular moment in American history. I could not agree more with that. Like, this was right up our alley, and we almost missed it because of the trailer, Yeah,
because we had just seen a trailer when we watched him.
Yes, last week, and we literally just watched the movie yesterday. But we're coming to you to say, I mean, if you haven't got a clue already, you know that we're going to say it's a good movie, but we're going to give you a little bit more reasons to actually check it out. So the cast is Leonardo DiCaprio as one of the main characters. He plays Bob and Ghetto Pat, aka Ghetto Pat. Then we got Tiana Taylor, who's playing Perfidia Beverly Hills. And then we have Chase Infinity as Willa, aka Baby Charlene. And then Sean Penn is also in the film as Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. Benicio del Toro shows up as Sergio St. Carlos, who is Willa, who was played by Chase Infinity. Her character Sensei, she's a 16-year-old, so he's teaching her karate. And then we have Regina Hall as Deandra and a host of other people, but these are the main cast of the film.
It's karate.
I think it's karate. Well, maybe it's not. Listen, somebody in the comments, some type of martial artist. Somebody in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. So let's get to our ratings of the film.
Okay.
So first, with the plot, let me just let you guys know the film is about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's almost 3 hours. And 3 hours in the theater, like, this has to be good to go be willing to sit 3 hours in the theater. Because the last time we saw a 3-hour long movie in the theater. It was what, Horizon?
Oh yeah,
the Kevin
that was too
Costner movie. And it was so long, and by the end I was just like, oh my gosh. But the plot in this movie is a 10 because it kept me sitting there the entire time like, yes. And just, again, I love the movies that I can't figure out. I don't know what's coming next. It kept me engaged the whole time. And I just really, appreciated that by the filmmakers. So I definitely would give the plot a 10.
Yeah, so I'll say I'll give it a 9. The thing is that it ties up all these things. So we start off, you know what I'm saying? They're showing us about ICE. ICE is snatching people off the street. They have these ICE detention centers. And basically you have these rogue forces within the military and stuff as well. But you have this far left group who is really about, and because of the novel, I didn't know this till later, was about, the year 1984, ironically, right? During the Reagan years. And I'm guessing it was about this past group, right, that we think of when we think of the 60s and 70s, these left-wing revolutionary groups that it seems so applicable today, but I don't think those groups exist in the same way that people on the news now are trying to make it out to be. It is nothing like that, which it to me kind of shows like maybe should have been more cautionary thing as well, and maybe even inscriptive. So yeah, I gave it a 9.
So you gave it a 9. All right. So that's almost a 10. That's close enough. That's really close to a 10.
Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply.
Yeah, so it's always trying to, it's one of those you're on your edge of your seat the entire time. I don't know how they pulled that off. I don't know how they do that.
For 2 hours and 45 minutes?
Yeah, it was, quote, one battle after another.
It literally was. But the thing I loved about it was that it wasn't like a nonstop action film. Because y'all know, I get worn out with the action. Because, a lot of times the action is just action for action's sake, just explosions and all that, just so we can see how great, the technology is in capturing all of this stuff. This was not that.
I feel you in that. And that's why, for entertainment, I also give it a 9 because I don't like action movies. But you had a car chase scene without cars being chased in one part. Then you had a car chase scene where I'll talk about the cinematography later. But yeah, you had another car chase scene. A lot of this stuff seems so new too.
It felt new.
Yeah.
And that's why I am actually giving this a 10. I have to give it a 10 because entertainment, I was entertained. And like for a movie that's an hour and a half long, sometimes I'm like, when is it over? Because when we're watching, even if we're watching in the comfort of our own home, I'm saying, how much time is left? How much time is left? And that's for a movie that's 90 minutes. This movie was almost twice the length of a typical film that we're watching. And I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Like, I can't impress upon you how entertaining that this film was. So, that was a good one. Let's get to cinematography since you brought that up. For cinematography, what do you give it?
For cinematography, I'm going to go ahead and give it I'll get at a 9 as well, if I could ever get to it. I'll go ahead and give it a 9. It was good. Like they had this car chase scene, and they were like on a hilly road, and I'm like, "How you do?" And then they're changing kind of how the film looks and stuff. I'm like, "What's going on, bro?"
So if you imagine being on a roller coaster, because it was really hilly, you're getting like this POV perspective as they're riding up and down the hills. Then there's another amazing shot in the film where 2 of the characters come face to face for the first time, and it's a profile shot of them just like literally millimeters away from each other. That was amazing in the film. Like, so, and it just came at the right time when all the tension is built up. I mean, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Like, cinematography, if you haven't guessed by now, is going to be a 10. Y'all, listen, Sinners is a movie that I felt was the best film of the year. I still feel like Sinners is the best film of the year, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible because I might have given Sinners a 10 across the board. But so far in each of these categories, as I'm going through them, this is getting a 10. Like, this might be the second best movie of the year.
Second best? Second to Sinners?
Might be the second best movie of the year because we still have Him that we saw last week that we covered, that I'll link in the description if you didn't see it. A lot of y'all actually saw Him, but there's another movie that a lot of you guys haven't seen, or if you did see, you talked bad about it, and that is Highest to Lowest, Spike Lee's movie. And so these are three.
But you had Magazine Dreams come out this year.
And Magazine Dreams was earlier in the year too. Like, but you're right, Magazine Dreams. That's 2. This might be 3. It's going to be really hard this year because if I'm saying which one I think is the best film of the year, Sinners still has a couple of good movies nipping at the heels, but yeah. So,
but as a narrative, as a story, I don't know if Sinners holds up, but we're not talking about that right now.
Yes, and we covered Sinners as well, and we'll link that in the description. A couple videos on Sinners.
Yeah. So I went ahead and gave it a 9, but the acting. So we got a bunch of stars who are in this film: Leonardo DiCaprio, Teyana Taylor. So when I first saw the trailer, I think I said, I was like, she can't act that good, right? And you had Sean Penn up in there. Regina Hall. I was like, Regina Hall is in there. But Teyana Taylor wasn't bad.
Right. So the acting that they portrayed in the trailer just wasn't to me the best representation, because her acting was a lot better in the actual film than what I saw in the little snippets in the trailer. Right.
So everybody did good in this movie.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And I like how, you had Sean Penn and Leonardo DiCaprio who were just the best, right? They both were playing very interesting characters. And I don't think we actually seen them in those roles. Right. Especially now that they're older too. So pretty much for the acting, I can give it a 10. I don't think anybody didn't hold up to, just peak performance, right?
Yeah. I mean, and just like you, I have to give it an acting a 10. There's nothing I can say as far as the acting that would, change the fact that it should be a 10. But in Teyana Taylor's defense, again, because we saw her in Straw most recently, and we did cover Straw, which we can link in the description as well for those of you who didn't see us covering that film. And, I think that I can't say she's come a long way because I haven't seen her in a whole ton of stuff, but she's not a bad actor, but she's up against like Academy Award winning actors. You know what I'm saying? So like the bar is very, very high. And I think she did hold her own, although, and we're going to get into this in the spoiler part of it. Her character in here might not have been such a stretch,
really?
Given her
we'll get into that.
mystique. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're just probably talking about the sexualization of the character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a bunch of like sexual thing that at the beginning it was just so much. I'm like, man, they about to ruin this film with all the sexuality portion of it, right? But I think that's a commentary in itself, because I think that, when I was watching it, I was just kind of like, how you hear the people who talk about like the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions and their sexuality and it being revolutionary and stuff. And I'm like, they kind of did tie that in a sort of a way where this sexualized commentary and how they're using that as power and such, and, kind of trying to weave it in. I don't know if it worked 100%, but I think that they were trying to weave that into some sort of modern ideology.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. But yeah, so let's look at the sound. To me, the sound, there were points, and am I just getting old? Because I said this about the sound in the past too. but I was like, the sound is a little too loud at points.
What? Yeah, you old.
But it was okay. It was okay. Like, and I can't call it a 10 because there weren't things about the sound that made it stand out except the soundtrack.
The
they
score
did
or the soundtrack?
Both. Right.
Okay.
The soundtrack and the score. So, for that reason, I'm going to give it an 8 because it's, the songs that they did choose to use were a lot of the songs were older songs that brought back. I was like, oh, I remember that song. So it definitely was a good soundtrack. The score was also pretty good as well because it kept you engaged. It took you on the emotional roller coaster ride you needed to go on. So, I mean, it was definitely, I give it an 8.
Okay.
What about you with sound?
With the sound, I'll go ahead. I'll give it an 8 as well because a lot of the score portion just seemed like this same composition of some almost jazz pianos, and maybe we could just say jazz piano, and that's playing for a quite long time. And I think they're using that a lot to try to keep the tension there.
You know what it reminded me of? The movie The Firm, starring Tom Cruise, that came out back in the 90s, used a lot of that same style when they were going to, doing their scheme, if you will, right? When they're like, enacting the plan that's going to get so-and-so caught up or whatever, they use a lot of that jazz piano in there as well. So it sort of reminded me of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for the last and
editing.
Final category, there is editing. For editing, I'm going to give the editing a 9. I felt that the editing was good. It kept me right there. It's probably one of the biggest reasons why I wasn't bored in this film because the editing was good. The shots weren't too long unless they needed to be for the purpose of the film. So I definitely think editing was a 9, which gives me an overall score of 9.7. So you can see that's pretty high. I don't think many other movies I've rated that high.
Yeah. So for the editing, I'll give it a 9 as well. That gives me a 9 because the editing was good. Like you know how you watch some action movies or action sequences and you can't tell what's going on, who is where and all of the stuff and what's in relation to what? I didn't quite understand it except for like one part of the chase. I was trying to look at it from the character's perspective and how would the character be perceiving those cars going that way, right? And then when I see the cars again, are the cars going that way or are they going the other way, right? And where is this person in relation to the other two cars?
And in a chase, that's really important.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't quite get that, but whatever. It wasn't that bad because you watch some action movies or just movies in general, and you have and I think they're just trying to disorient you. But I didn't get that from this.
So our final scores are, my score was 9.7. Heit's score was a 9.0. So we answer the question ourselves, like, is it worth the watch? Of course. You all need to see this movie. This movie is so important. And just like I quoted from the Chicago Tribune writer, the bottom line is that this is like a right now film. It is a commentary on where we are right now in politics, in social culture, in history, all of that. It is definitely worth the watch. And we also want to just add that we have new merch. Think for yourself, question everything, and break free from the so-called truths that they want you to accept. The Axiom Amnesia collection is here. Bold logo t-shirts and hoodies designed for thinkers who refuse to settle for the assumptions. Stand out and make a statement. Show the world you don't just go along, you think critically. Plus, it's a great way to support the channel and keep the work going. Get yours today. The link's in the description, or visit us anytime at axiom.app. All right, so those of you who were here for the non-spoiler review, you might want to hop off the call because we about to spoil it now.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into a summary of the film and what happens. All right, so the film kind of opens up with them going into the ICE facility. So we have Tiana Taylor's character, whose name is Perfidia Beverly Hills. And we also have Leonardo DiCaprio's character, whose name for the film
It's Bob.
is Bob.
He's just Bob.
And it's also Ghetto Pat, right? So at this point in the film, his name is Ghetto Pat, right? And because these, I guess, are like the code, the code names that they use because they're part of the French 75, this left-wing revolutionary group in this film, right? So they're at what we would just call an ICE facility at this point, although it just is generic. It's not called ICE in the film. It's just generically an immigration facility where they have people who they are holding. And so they go in there because their goal is to free them, right? So they got a 18-wheeler. Oh, and I forgot to mention Wood Harris is in this film. Avon Barksdale, to all of y'all who love The Wire. He is also in the film as a member of the French 75. And
Jungle Pussy, who is played by Jungle Pussy.
Yes, that's the real name.
Yeah.
So, so then they go into an ICE facility, and then we see Perfidia, and she goes into the guy who's in charge. And who's in charge? Well, that's Sean Penn's character, Colonel Lockjaw. So she goes into him, and they're rounding up all the people, but she's in there by herself with him. And then it just turns like sexual, right? And she's just like, oh, make your thing, get up, right? And so she makes him, get a woody, or she makes him make himself get a woody because she doesn't do anything. She's just holding, the weapon on him. And then, it just turns completely sexual. So she has used her sexual prowess against him. But I want to get into this name. Her name is Perfidia Beverly Hills. Not sure exactly why the Beverly Hills part was in there, but I could speculate. But if you go to the name Perfidia, and this is the Spanish word for perfidy, which, in English, right, which means deceitfulness, untrustworthiness, disloyalty, treachery, it's all of these things in it. It refers to an act of deliberate betrayal, a breach of faith or trust, and deceitfulness that causes harm to somebody who's placed their confidence in the betrayer. And furthermore, in the context of war, perfidy is the form of a deceptive tactic where one side pretends to act in good faith, such as signing a truce or raising a white flag, but they do it with the deliberate intention of breaking that promise. So the goal is to trick the enemy into lowering their guard, such as stepping out of cover to accept a supposed surrender to only exploit their vulnerabilities, right? So here her name is Perfidia. So she is somebody who is going to be using this form of deception as a tactic, right? And that's what she's doing here. So she's using her sexual prowess, pretending to like him, pretending to be, into him. And this happens in the film. So that's important for her character going forward. So anyway, they get all of the people out of the facility or whatever. They lock up the guards but when I tell you that Lockjaw, when he sees Perfidia, he is just like totally taken by her, sexually taken by her. He is just like, oh man, and so after she leaves him, she tells him, like basically that he's like, oh, I'll see you later, because he's going to come back, to try to get her. So this group is doing all kind of revolutionary acts. It says that they were for women's rights, and they were getting on the politicians who would vote against women's rights and women's health rights, especially, right? And so next thing we know, Sean Penn, as this ICE official, is actually kind of like stalking her. He's watching her as she's with her group and she's doing everything. Of course, it's very sexualized or whatever. But at one point, he is sitting in his vehicle and he is, I don't know, pleasing himself, let's say, as he watches her, perform her duties for this group. And so, but her character is just overly sexualized to me. Well, should I say overly sexualized? But she also is the girlfriend, the partner with Leonardo DiCaprio's character. So this is her man that she does all of this stuff with. But, she uses her sexual prowess however is needed to get the advantage, right, in this war that they're in. And they go on this one job where she's supposed to be doing her part. They're in a courthouse or whatever. She can't have her do her job for like kissing all over him and stuff like that before and after. It's just like really crazy. But while she's on that job, Sean Penn's character, that's Lockjaw, he catches her in the bathroom and he's like, basically, if you want to keep doing what you want to do, then you need to come and meet me at a time. So then after that, she goes and she meets him in a hotel room. And I mean, obviously, you know what he wants. So then they have this dominatrix type of sex or whatever at that point, right? And, she didn't want to do it, but she didn't want anything to come in between her pursuits with this group, right? So next thing you know, we see her with a big old belly. And she's pregnant and she's shooting a gun at the same time. And how would you describe Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Project Pat or Bob? In
the beginning?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, he's just like top-notch revolutionary, right? So there's all...
And he's the explosives guy.
Yeah. He does the explosive technology, right? So he knows all about the technology and everything, which is about like, so when you do have these idea of maybe one day you're going to have to fight the revolution or fight off some oppressors and stuff, you have to have people with different trades who can do different things and play different roles. And that was one of, his roles. But he was there too, right? When all these things going down. So everybody's playing their part. But yeah, he was just all the way down for it. And he was her lover, right?
Yeah.
Because that's important.
Yeah.
They were together.
They were together. That's her partner. And so, but when we see her clearly months later pregnant, we're like, okay, we just seen her get with Sean Penn's character, Lockjaw, Colonel Lockjaw.
That's how you was?
Yeah, because I immediately was like, okay, who baby is this?
That's from watching Tyler Perry.
It probably is, but that's what I thought, right? And so, yeah, that was a question in my mind from the jump. But while she's shooting her, practicing, this with this automatic rifle, and the crew is all together. Also in the crew is Regina Hall's character, who is with them. Deandra. Yeah. And so she's sitting there along with Project Pat, Bob.
Project Pat?
I mean, did I say Project?
Hey, y'all, she said Project Pat.
Up. I mean, Project...
Chicken
anyway.
Project Pat.
These
Ghetto
names
Pat.
Is too, with Ghetto Pat. And so he's talking to Deandra and he's like, and they're just watching her because she's sitting there and she's talking to one of the other girls in the group and she's like, pussy is a weapon, pussy is for war, and all of this and that. And then they're just joking with each other like it's nothing, but she's literally looking like 9 months pregnant because she's pretty big at this point. And then they give you a line from The Color Purple, talk about, kill him dead. Talking about when Sophia, Oprah Winfrey's character in The Color Purple, is talking about Harpo, if he beat me, if he beats me, I'm going to kill him dead. Harpo, I'll kill him dead if he, put his hands on me again. So that's that. And they're talking, though, Ghetto Pat, with Deandra about the fact that, like, she doesn't even seem like she knows she's pregnant. Like, do you know you're about to have a baby? She's not doing any, she is just unbothered, Perfidia is, right? She's just like, I'm carrying on with my life like I'm not even pregnant, just whatever. And you can see that he's concerned because he's like, okay, we're a family now. We're trying to be together now. And you still out here wild and trying to be this revolutionary. And so then we see him talking to her family, her mother, and they are some very dignified Black folks. But her mother and grandmother are there, and they're like, she comes from a whole line of revolutionaries, and she's, how do they refer to her? They said she's like a runner, and you're a stump. But basically something to say that she's somebody who is moving all the time, and you're not a mover. Like you're very different, and how is this going to work? And then, so they have the baby and everything, and they're trying to be a little family. And Perfidia confesses, she's like, I carried the baby for 9 months, but he's just enamored with this baby. And she's jealous of her daughter, the baby, and the baby's name is Charlene. So she's jealous of Charlene. And I thought that this was a very vulnerable moment to put out there, because I do think that this is something that happens to the other parent sometimes when people have a baby, where they feel like they're not getting the attention that they used to get from their partner, because now there's this third party, the baby, who can't do anything and needs a parent. And so you hear about people, feeling like this. But in her case, she was like, is it wrong? Like, I'm jealous of my baby. And clearly there's other things, because she's talking about I'm not okay and all this. And she's clearly got some signs of postpartum depression and stuff, too. And he's trying to ground her and tell her, like, look, we're a family now. And she's like, I put myself first and you trying to control me and all of this other stuff like that. And then she gets angry with him and she's like, your crumbling ego will never, you'll never be able to do the revolution like I can do the revolution. And then she just walks out on him and the baby, and she goes to do a job with the French 75. Well, unfortunately, they are trying to rob a bank, and she kills the guard.
And they say this is Set It Off.
Yeah. They actually refer to the film Set It Off, which we have covered and we can put in the description for you. But she refers to the film Set It Off. And then in the process of trying to get away from this bank robbery after she has shot and killed this guard, they have a car accident. She's trying to run from the police, but ultimately Perfidia gets caught. And then she's in a hospital room, and guess who is like the guy who is her arresting officer, interrogator, or whatever? Sean Penn's character, Colonel
Lockjaw?
Lockjaw, yes. His name escaped me for a moment. And she's doing her perfidia thing again, right? And she's like, well, you can save me. And he's like, because you're in love with me and you can't live without me. And she says, yes, of course we know it's not true, but she's just trying to get out of the situation. And so he encourages her to snitch so that he can give her, quote, the embrace of the federal government. So in other words, if you snitch, tell on your friends, tell on your crew, then you can get out of this situation. So at the same time, they know what else is going on because Regina Hall's character, Deandra, was there at the bank robbery as well. They know that she's been caught. We see Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Pat. He is like, oh, everybody's just trying to get the heck out of there. And, so that they can, get things together. And then there's this guy who's in their crew and he gives them the new identity to Pat. His new identity is Bob. So we're just going to call him Bob from now on. And so Bob's got a new identity. They give a new identity for the baby, and then he flees with the baby. Perfidia also got a new identity, and she just has decided she's going to turn state's evidence or whatever. She gets a new life. They give her a house. They talking about, get you a job, blah, 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 right? Lockjaw is using the information that Perfidia gave him, and he's killing members of the crew, arresting members of the crew, and all of that stuff, right? And then as a result of all that, he gets the Bedford Forrest Medal of Honor for getting the French 75, because he's supposedly like rounded them up, put an end to them, so he single-handedly did this. And then he did it with the information that he got from Perfidia, right? Yeah, it's wild. But then there's a reason that that's the Medal of Honor that he's given. So basically, Nathan Bedford Forrest, right? He was an American slave trader who also served in the General Army of the Confederate States of the United. So he was a Confederate. All right. So that says a lot. So, and this brings up the notion that we're having right now in current history where, the question of maintaining Confederate monuments, names and whatever. Well, this guy, for what he did, got this Medal of Honor because what he was, he was fighting the same kind of fight. Just
so he was basically
later.
Yeah, kind of doing what ICE is doing now. He's rounding up immigrants and stuff and treating them bad, right? And then he's going after these groups, right? So then he asked one who was like a slave catcher, basically, is who the award was named after that he was honored with.
For those of you who don't know, you should visit axiom.app. And you'll be able to look at all of the recent videos across all of our channels. And I'm putting that on the screen right now just so y'all can see it and see what it looks like, because there are a ton of videos that are over there. And also, I think that there are at least about 100 exclusive videos that are available for our Patreon members and our YouTube members. So, if you're interested in more of our content, as I've seen many of you binge watching, be sure to check those things out. Lockjaw goes to her door, Perfidia's door, because he's into her, and he says he loves her, but and she's gone, and she's left a note. So that means she has skipped out on her witness protection stuff. She's not going to be testifying against anybody. So, and then she leaves on a writing on the note that she's left for him that says, "This pussy don't pop for you." And then she crosses the border into Mexico. And then the movie fast forward 16 years. So just when you thought it was too much, looking at her being over-sexualized and all of that, this character, then they change gears. And so then we see this daughter who is now a teenager, right? And she takes karate, or she takes martial arts. But Benicio del Toro plays her sensei. And then we see Bob, aka Pat, he is at a parent-teacher conference, and he starts crying during the meeting while he's meeting with the teacher. He also is just like a pothead at this point in life, and he has just been living, trying to stay under the radar. By the way, when they got the new identity from the friend before they fled, the friend gave him this device that lets him know, like, it's a tracking device. And if another person has a device that lights up like this, then you know that they could be trusted, right? Because it's been issued by this, the French 75 group. And then they have a series of, test questions, challenge questions or whatever, and answers that you're supposed to give. But he tells the teacher that the daughter, whose name was, as a baby, it was Charlene, but now her name is Willa as a teenager, because they took the names and identity of some dead people. It's funny because we just talked about that in another video, people taking identities of dead people back in the day, and that's how they would, get new identities. But anyway, he tells the teacher that Willa's mother died when she was young, and she grew up without a mother and all of that. So then we also see Lockjaw. He gets invited to join this group called the Christmas Adventures Club, which is basically like this white supremacist shadow group. And they're telling him, like, you are a superior man, and we are dedicated to making the world a safe and pure place. Everything that you could imagine they would say is like the kind of stuff that they say or whatever. And they're like, in order to get in this group, we gotta, do a background check and everything on you. And, you're American born by Gentile, right? And all of these other questions. Have you ever been in an interracial relationship? And well, we know that he has done things because we know what he did with Perfidia at this point in the film. But he submits himself to join. They're going to do this extensive background check on him and everything like that. And he's emotional when he leaves because he's like, I think it's because he's just like, oh my goodness, I'm going to the next level, because these people have like unlimited money, all of that stuff. Then the next thing we see is the member of the French 75 that had given Bob his new identity is captured while he is broadcasting. And what I thought was really cool was some kids see him get carted off by people. The kids go to his broadcast and they start broadcasting basically like a SOS type of message to say what happened to him, which I was like, oh, they got their stuff together. Mm-hmm. And but ultimately he winds up giving.
Yeah, they were Hispanic.
Huh?
They were Hispanic.
And they were Hispanic.
Latino.
They were Latino kids. And so ultimately what happens is he gives up Bob and his location, and the baby's location, because they threaten his sister. And so then Colonel Lockjaw is now going to go and try to find the girl, because this is who he really wants, because he clearly thinks that that's his child. Why does he want to kill the father and keep the girl alive?
That's what I'm saying. So like, is it just like, I'm doing this from a law enforcement standpoint, because it's that, of course, we know that from all we know from history and current events is that these people have their agendas. And of course, if they think somebody is, against what they're for, which is the oppression of these black and brown people, then you would say that somebody who is actively fighting the war should be taken out, right? Which is why you didn't just say take out everybody.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's what he's after them. And so at the same time, we see Willa and her father, Bob, and they're back at their house. She's getting ready to go to a dance. And then, you know, we get some back and forth about the awkwardness of just being a parent who loves their kid. And he's also extra concerned because he knows that they have this extra level of danger that they're in hiding, although she doesn't know this, right? And so she leaves with her friends to go to the dance. And so she's at the dance, and it's right while she's at the dance that everything starts happening or whatever. Deandra shows up at the dance where Willa is, and she gives her a code word while she's in the bathroom. And with this device that Bob has made Willa wear take with her every place. And so she's like, will you go with me? All of these things, because I'm here to rescue. I'm here to save you. She knows that anybody who has this device, you trust them with your life. That's what Willa has been taught. And she's been taught the code words and all of that stuff all of her life. So she knows how to respond properly. She leaves out of there with Deandra. And just as they're leaving, the police and, Colonel Lockjaw are descending upon the place to try to find her.
And by police, these are just basically some, I don't know, paramilitary group or military group. So when you have these, as we see now, the totalitarian, right, or the these people with authority, they're using these groups, the military and the police, as one to force their will, right? So that's basically what it is. It's kind of like he's doing the local police enforcement. They're wearing police uniforms that say police, right? But he's a colonel in what appears to be, I guess, sort of like a military role, because, but we have the whole history of the militarization of the police force. So it's all basically one in whatever timeline we're on when this movie's taking place.
Right. So in the meantime, Willa and Deandra get away from, them in that moment. We see Bob. Bob is at the house getting high, like Bob is always getting high, literally in his robe and sitting there. He gets a phone call, and the call is asking him for all of these passwords and stuff like that. And, they tell him basically that his daughter is okay. She's been retrieved, but that he's in trouble and he needs to get the heck out of there. And then the next thing we know, after he hangs up the phone, Lockjaw and his crew are busting into the house that they have, which is kind of in the woods and whatever. And Bob has escaped through a tunnel that is like under his house. And it he goes through the tunnel and then he, pops out in the woods nearby his house. And all he has with him, he's still wearing the robe and he has a go bag. But, while he's in the tunnel, they actually put some tear gas or something down there in there to try to smoke him out. But he does get away. He calls from a payphone and he keeps calling the French 75 number, but he doesn't remember all the passwords. He's like, look, it's been years. I don't remember all of that stuff. So he gets desperate and he goes to the sensei. That's Benicio del Toro's character. He goes to where his daughter takes karate. And at the same time in town, they're doing an immigration roundup because they've highlighted this as a sanctuary city and all of that. So it's sounding so much like...
Right. So, and that's just the cover that they use to be able to go in and basically attack this family, right? So they're like, oh, we're going here because, they got these people who are illegal immigrants and they're committing crimes, basically using it as a cover so they could go in and harass everybody. And then, that causes the protests and everything to go. But all of this is just a front for trying to get Bob and his daughter.
This personal agenda that, that Lockjaw has with Bob and his daughter. So when he's talking to the sensei tells him, we got to get out of here because I got this situation. And because he's also gotten a call at the same time that the roundups are happening from, I guess, his wife or whomever. And they're like trying to tell him what's up. And he's like, all right, I'll be there in a minute. And so he tells Bob, he's like, look, I got a Latino Harriet Tubman situation at my house. And I was like, yes, it's like when I asked you about this, right, a while ago, I was like, is there like a Underground Railroad?
Well,
for today, and we briefly talked about that. But in this film, he talks about it. And that's basically what he has at his house. But we'll get to that later. So then we get Bob explaining how, they were like, he's like, well, what's up with you? Why are they after you? Bob is explaining like, I was a member of the French 75 along with her mother and we in trouble and da-da-da-da-da.
So the thing is, now you have these two different groups who it seems like have different, what's the word? They have different objectives, right? So, they have the same enemy, but they have different objectives. And then there's basically forms an alliance between them, even though they don't really necessarily, well, one of them probably doesn't really necessarily understand the plight of the other group, right? So Bob, he probably knows because, he's a true leftist and a revolutionary, right? He knows kind of like the plight of the Latinos here in America and the whole immigration thing and the weight of policing. But he is just basically a tag along, and Sensei just knows that, all right, this guy is a leftist, you know what I'm saying, a far leftist. He's cool. I'm gonna do whatever I can, because if that same group is after him, then whatever his gripe is probably legitimate. So it just helps him along the way to get away from your enemy who is always on some bullshit.
And remember, the French 75, they did free all of those people out of that immigration, that ICE camp at the beginning of the film.
That was one of their issues.
They have many agendas, but ultimately they want people to be free. And so while the Sensei's agenda was more narrow in the sense that he's, working for his people and doing all of this.
Yeah, he's like a community leader, and we know that these are the issues, and it's good that he's a sensei because it puts him in kind of that position and in that headspace to be able to prepare and, do all of the things, put all the things in place ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So, but he is just basically, he had his plan laid out, right? Mm-hmm. The French 75 had their plans laid out. They had all these protocols and policies and everything. And part of the thing that was funny about it is that, the sensei was all together, but you see that Ghetto Pat, he's from back in the day when they were all young and didn't know anything. That is commentary on these groups and, these revolutionary groups, people who call themselves revolutionary. You put all these things in place, and those things that you put in place doesn't allow for there to be any space for mitigating things that go wrong. Like this whole time, he's trying to figure out, hey, what is this password? I don't know this password. And then we got the stickler for those protocols who's just like, well, you don't know.
If you don't know this, that means you're not who, who you say you are, type of stuff.
But your boy's plans worked out perfectly. Sensei's plans that has probably been mapped out over the years worked out perfectly. When you have the French 75, I'm guessing maybe they spent, a couple days coming up with their protocols that will have to, they didn't go back to adjust, that will have to play out for years, the rest decades of their lives, basically.
Yes. And so in the meantime, Willa's friends are being interrogated because they done took over the little school dance, and now they keep asking people, hey, Willa. And then finally they get to Willa's friends that she went to the dance with. They admit that they know her, and now they're interrogating her friends. And they're like, and they're like, okay, what's her phone number? Because obviously they want to track the phone. And they're like, she doesn't have a phone, because that is the lie that they're telling all the adults, right? Because Willa is not supposed to have a phone because her father doesn't want her to have a phone to be able to be tracked and, be targeted, right? But of course, somehow Willa has a phone, and everybody knows Willa has a phone. So they're trying to keep up this lie that she doesn't have a phone. So her friends were trying to be solid. And then we see the sensei who tells her father that she has a phone. He's like, what? She's got a phone. Oh my gosh. And so at the same time, Willa is escaping with Deandra, and she tells her that Lockjaw is the one who killed her mother, according to her father. So she's like, my mother is dead, and this is the man who killed him. Right. And so the sensei has this whole operation essentially of like an underground railroad that is in a storefront. And then they've got like these apartments that are upstairs or rooms that are upstairs. And he's got a whole room where he's got people who need sanctuary, need sanctuary. And he's like, okay, we're going to move them, and we're going into the church and all of that, because that's where they're able to, I think the church is a place where they can't bust in there, which is why when there's raids, they go into the church or whatever. So,
but there's been some policy that's changed in the United States where they just don't give a fuck.
I don't think they would respect. I think they would kick in the door of a church the same way as they would in any place today. Yeah. In the past, they were respecting the church, not anymore. So, like you mentioned, the sensei is also saving Bob, who is trying to charge his phone because his phone is dead and he needs to call back to get the rendezvous point with his daughter. That's the whole thing. But he doesn't remember the codes, but he finally charges the phone and he still doesn't remember the code to answer that question of what time it is. And so they're getting the people to the church. So all while this is happening, the sensei is just woo-saw. He is just calm. He's like, all right, go ahead and do this. He's calling out, the next order to the people who work with him to safely get the people to where they need to go so that they aren't captured by the folks who have descended on this town.
Yeah. And Bob, he's trying to find places along the way. He has this old phone, that he's trying to get charged so that he can make a call. But it's not like your modern day phone.
And then they had this funny thing happen, right? So the guy who's on the phone with him with the French 75 is asking, for the code. And then Bob just snaps on him and everything. And the guy on the phone starts talking about how like he feels attacked or he doesn't feel safe. And he's like, what do you mean invading my space or something like that?
Yeah.
We on the phone, bro. Like this is such a very right now thing.
And but one of the funny thing was that he called him. He called them basically like you. He basically said, you fucking liberal. Mm-hmm. That's what Bob told him about how he was acting, right? Because Bob, he's a true revolutionary and he has the reputation and everything to back that, right? And another thing, he was like, what kind of a revolutionary are you?
Mm-hmm. So finally, he's like, let me speak to your supervisor. So he pulls the let me talk to your supervisor thing. The supervisor turns out to be someone who he knew from, his days in. And he's like, all right, and he thinks of another challenge question to ask him. He's like, you're going to know the answer to this. You're going to know it. So he asks, and it was just the craziest question. And
he asked him what kind of pussy do I love or something. I don't know.
And I don't even remember what the answer was because it was irrelevant in that moment. But he's like, yeah, this is him. This is you. And then he tells the guy who gave Bob a hard time, he's like, that's a revolutionary. Make sure you apologize to him. So then he gets back on the phone and he's like, my sincerest apologies. It just was kind of, so this is the comedy in there that you need. But he gets the rendezvous point. And the sensei is still cool, even though the police are there, everything. And he gives Leo a rifle case because Leo also wanted a weapon. So he gives him the weapon and then they separate because he's got to go try to get the people to the church. And he's like, okay, get him to the rendezvous point. He gives these instructions. And he, the sensei, by the way, works with, the youth. He works with the skateboarder crowd and the people that are considered undesirables in the community and whatever. He gives them a chance and they work with him. And so that's who is supposed to be helping to get him to the rendezvous point. And they're running away. But basically, one of the friends for Willa, this is back at the school now with the police over there, gives up Willa's phone number. And then they call her phone and they see her location, right? They can see that she's traveling, along a certain route. And Deandra is pissed because she's like, I asked you if you had a phone, and she lied. She lied about having the phone when they first, escaped together. So now they know where they were, at least at that moment. So now they're hot on their tails. In the meantime, you got Bob trying to cross rooftops and jump from building to building to get the heck away so that he can get to the rendezvous point. He's with these guys. And why Bob fall? Bob fell to the ground. Yeah, because they were young. Bob's older. He fell to the ground. Surprised he didn't break any bones, but he gets up. He falls to the ground. Then he gets tased and they arrest him.
It wasn't supposed to be fun. Maybe it was.
It was funny.
It was supposed to be funny, but it was funny.
So then one of the guys calls to report to the sensei that Bob got arrested. He's like, how did that happen? He fell. So Willa and Deandra arrive at this rendezvous point, and it is a nunnery. And the head nun is one of the women who had robbed the bank with Perfidia back in the day. So she's an ex-member of the French 75 crew or whatever. But they're dressed up, they're nuns, and apparently they grow weed or whatever in the desert. And so they pull out sage when they see Perfidia's daughter. And she says to the daughter, says to Willa, she's like, the daughter of a rat is a baby rat. And she talks about how it's risky for her to be there. But Deandra is like, basically, will you give her refuge? And they agree to do it. But there is this standoff where they are like, not really wanting her to come in because of who her mother is and stuff like that. But she is allowed to stay. And this guy named Tim, who goes into this house where they're playing Christmas music. And then this woman is like, oh, okay, I think they're waiting for you. He goes downstairs. Now, this is the Christmas Adventure Club, the, supremacist group or whatever, right? And underneath they have like a whole, a facility, but you enter in a house that just looks normal, and then it's like this whole facility underground. So he goes in a room with these guys, and basically what happens is they're introducing him to a few of the guys that's in the room, and they're having a meeting. Something has happened, and one dude is from the cleansing and distortion department. They didn't say department, but he's like, yeah, this is so and so from cleansing and distortion. Think about that. They are a group that is like this unseen hand that is moving things behind the scenes, and they have somebody in a group that's called cleansing and distortion. Just imagine what cleansing and distortion does, and from a propaganda perspective. So basically, they say, hey, there's a report that Lockjaw is the father of a mixed race child. And then, they're discussing what they should do about it or whatever. And then they talk about Perfidia and how, that it was talk that she wasn't the mothering type or something like that. Because, she was, running around doing these revolutionary acts and stuff when she had this baby. And then one of the guys had the nerve to be like, and they call us savages. And it just was so many different things going on. Too many to actually name just in the rundown here. But anyway, they tell Tim, like, look, you got to make this clean. We should. And then the guy is like, so clean that we should be able to eat off the floor. So they giving him a message that, look, you going to have to take care of this and make sure that this doesn't come back to be negative on us. So then they all say, all hail Saint Nick. So at the end of this, it's not a Christian group. They are not Christians. They are worshiping Saint Nick in a sense, right? So then we see Willa, that they done start calling baby Perfidia. She's like a beast physically, she can do her martial arts and stuff. And she finally comes and asks Deandra, was her mother a rat? And then she admits, yes, that she was. And when we go back to, the idea of her name, perfidy, and that she was disloyal. She did snitch. She was, she snitched, and it hurt her group as a result. And she did it to save herself. But anyway, this nunnery group, by the way, is called the Sisters of the Brave Beaver.
Bro.
Meanwhile, Bob is there, under arrest, having been round up, and they want to get his name and stuff like that. And then the lady that's interviewing him is like, oh, are you sick? And then she's like giving him signals like to say yes, or, and then she gets him to say that he is a diabetic who hasn't taken insulin. And so she tells the people who are doing the roundup, hey, he's going to have to go to the infirmary. He can't just, stay in jail or whatever. And so they send Bob to the hospital, and the nurse is telling him how to escape. She's like, right now you're going to go in through the bathroom and you do that and you're going to escape. And he does escape. So then we see the sensei is downstairs waiting to drive him away. So the sensei has people in all of these places. He wasn't worried that he wouldn't be able to get Bob back because he had people on the inside.
When your community is strong, right? And
that part. You
have people that's down for the cause. They all can be, you play their parts in whatever role they in, right? When nothing is going on, right before these police or whoever showed up, they were just living their normal lives, but they all know they have their role once shit hit the fan. Right.
So they're on, they are actually there doing the screening. They're processing people who are round up. Because one of the things I was thinking to myself, like all these brown people rounding up brown people and doing the bidding of this supremacist group is just wild to me. But that is how it plays out on the low level, right? But they are not what they appear, because they were able to, get him out. Now, let's not talk about how the one they got out was actually somebody who wasn't, needing the sanctuary in the same way, and who also was a white man. But, either way, it shows the power of the sensei in his network that he had set up or whatever.
Yeah, but he was also a warrior, right? So, you have to weigh on basically how important people are in the fight, right? Which soldiers or which people are whatever level in the hierarchy too. So, this guy, he has his history and everything, especially once he told him who he was with. I'm sure the sensei had heard of, the French 75 and was like, okay.
So the Sisters of the Brave Beaver, that's where Willa and Deandra are. And they're sitting there talking or whatever. And ultimately, Lockjaw and his people come and they actually got Willa, and they have Deandra too. And, long story short, Willa comes face to face with Colonel Lockjaw, and he's looking at her and whatever. And he literally does. This is where that profile shot that I was talking about, that it was just so amazing, because they're almost nose to nose, like they're almost touching. He's looking at her to try to figure out if he thinks that she's his child and whatnot. And then he pulls out a thing and gives her a DNA test right there. Like he's get some cheek cells out of their mouths, and then he's going to compare it. And he's like, if there's a line that goes all the way across on this test, you're in trouble. So he's like, basically, if it doesn't line up, if you're not my child, you can go free. But if you are my child, there's a problem. And the test is reading, and they're talking back and forth while it's happening. Deandra's being interrogated. They're trying to get to where they want to know where Bob is or whatever. They want her to snitch. And, then Willa is back over there talking to Lockjaw, and Willa asks, like, did you, rape her? Talking about her mother, because she's trying to figure out how, why her mother would have dealt with this man. And so he's like, well, do you think you're my daughter? And she's like, did you love her? And then, he doesn't answer in that moment. And she's just like, well, I have a father. It doesn't matter what that test says. I got a father, and it's not you. And at the same time, we see that Deandra won't give up Bob's location or anything more about her, about him as well. And when Willa said that to him, in a world where there are so many blended families, where there are so many people who are raised with people who they may not be biologically related to at all, or, fathers who are raising children who are not biologically related to them, maybe step parents and whatever. I felt that, like, I was just like, she said, look, this is you ain't my daddy. I don't matter what the test says, that, because it's underscoring the importance of that relationship. Her father is who she knew to be her father, not, this guy who comes up after 16 years talking about, guess what? So anyway, but we know that Deandra is going to meet a bad end, because the guy that's interrogating her is like, look, if you give him up, maybe you're in a lose-lose situation. Maybe you save your life. Perhaps if you give him up, maybe you could live, but you still going to, federal prison and whatever. And so then Baby Perfidia, aka Willa, has some fight in her, right? She's going to make him chase her around. She's not going to willingly just, go along with what's happening. She's going to try to fight back and everything like that. And he's like, your mother had a smart mouth and I buried her. And then the test comes back and it says that she is his daughter. And Willa is like devastated in that moment. But he's just like, all right, well, get my stuff, put it in the car and get my kid. And he literally says, get my kid, which is what's wild, because he intends for her to be dead. He's going to get rid of her.
We know what happened back in the day in the United States, where and pre-United States, where they were fathering kids and then having them in servitude and beating them and doing the same thing they were doing to people who, weren't biologically theirs per se. So
he was like, get my kid, like, and it's just, you would think that that's like a term of endearment or something, you're acknowledging this is my child, not just this person. But, when we listen to what he does later, we just know. So then Bob and the sensei are driving together because they're trying to get to where Willa is, because they at the place, the nun place, because they now are going to this meetup point, and then they're drinking liquor in the car. Why are they drinking beer? But they're drinking, beer, and he's talking about how he's a father and how he had dreamed that Perfidia would come back someday and they could be a family. And, he's like, because I don't know how to do her hair right. And the thing is that obviously, she has curly hair and he doesn't. And he's saying, he acknowledges, like, I don't know how to do her hair the way her mother would have known how to do her hair and take care of her. So, like, pointing out that she's missing things, not only because she didn't have a mother there, but because she didn't have somebody who was also had some of the same cultural ties and even just the most basic of things of how to care for the hair, right? And so they have a moment there in the car, and then but they're drinking and all of that. So the police is going to pull them over, and the sensei is like, all right, you're going to have to jump.
Right, because they passed by, and as soon as the police was passing by, Bob took a swig out of his beer and they saw him.
Just a big old swig. Like, why, bro? Why?
Because they needed another battle.
Ugh. So, and then he's like, all right, when I count to 4, you jump. And of course he gets to 4 and Bob does not jump. He just won't jump. And this is like another funny moment.
He said, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to turn right here and then on 4 jump. And he never really slowed down.
Kept going at like 40 miles an hour. And he talked about tuck and roll. It was crazy. So in the meantime, Willa is making Lockjaw chase her. She's not going to get in that car willingly. And then he's like, I am a Christmas adventurer. I have a higher calling, and it is a higher honor than having you. This was the line of a century. I have a higher calling, and it is a higher honor than having you. So because he had this interracial child, that's ruining his chances to be a member of this white supremacist group.
Yeah. And
that's more important to him than this child, well, the woman that who he claims to love. Because he does tell her that he did love Perfidia, but, love, really? Okay. So when Bob gets there, he sees them trying to take Willa. He shoots at them, but he's still able, Lockjaw still escapes with Willa and stuff like that. And but he does, like I said, he says that he did love Perfidia, but that she was a witch and she was possessed. And then Willa is like, she was a rat. So now she's got these mixed feelings toward her mother, because in the past, her father had told her that her father Bob had told her that her mother was a hero and that she had just basically been killed by Lockjaw. And now she's seeing that, the DNA test that came back that you are the father, and this man that she doesn't even know that is now, trying to send her to her end is her actual biological father. And so her world is turned up. It's upside down. Everything she thought she understood is not true, especially because she spent her life feeling like her father was just paranoid and crazy, but her father just hadn't told her the whole deal, right? So Lockjaw winds up taking her into the desert with this bounty hunter, and where he meets the bounty hunter. And he tells the bounty hunter, all right, I need you to go ahead and kill her and whatever. He's like, oh, what'd she do? And then when he finds out that she's like a child, she's 16, he's like, oh, I don't do kids.
Yeah, but what he said was basically she's basically an illegal kind of, right, who's just doing criminal activity. That's basically. So
he lied, number one. He lied.
Used the same justification they're using right now to ship people off to these camps and to be tortured overseas.
And she wasn't, right? Because even with the fake identity that she had, neither of her identities was she somebody who was undocumented. So, but this goes to show, I mean, obviously a movie can't prove it, but I highly suspect is what happened. And we've seen news reports of similar that, if you're targeted, you're just targeted. It doesn't really matter what your paperwork says. They're just concerned with snatching folks up. Yeah. So the other thing we knew from the Christmas group or whatever is that this bounty hunter is someone who I think, what was he, half Native American or whatever, but they were saying that he wasn't to be trusted because basically they didn't want to trust him because he wasn't white. number one.
He wasn't full-blooded white Aryan, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was native.
Yeah. And so they felt that he wasn't to be trusted. But anyway, so he tries to get, and he's like, well, why don't you take her out? And he's like, well, I can't. I got something to do. And then he says, all right, well, then can you deliver her to where I want, somebody who's going to do it? And he says, yes, he'll deliver her.
What do they call them? A militia group is basically who the 1776 group, of course, because they wrap up that militia stuff with the patriotism when they're really just those same type of supremacists.
So he agrees to do that, and he takes her, but she doesn't go into that car without a fight. Like, she's really fighting. She's kicking her legs, trying to get away. So then we see that the sensei gets pulled over. The sensei is actually getting put under arrest. But he doesn't really care. And they're like, hey, why didn't you stop? And they're being all nice and everything. And he's just like, oh, well, and she was like, well, have you had anything to drink? And he was like, I had a couple small beers. So he admits he's in handcuffs. He's about to go to, lock up right quick. But it probably don't even matter because he knows he can get out and he's got his connections and so on and stuff. So Leah, in the same time, Bob is like passing because they're in the same vicinity. Bob is trying to find his daughter, and Bob passes the car that his daughter is in with this bounty hunter. The bounty hunter winds up delivering Willa, and they're all dealing with people that they don't like or trust is kind of the thing that here, right? Because, obviously the bounty hunter is Native American. He's not in with the 1776 people, but they have to have these they do business with each other, right? Because this is, quote, business to all of them. So he delivers Willa there, and then they tie her handcuff her to a chair or whatever. And the guy says to the bounty hunter as he's leaving, he calls him a wagon burner. And in another moment, he calls him red. And we see that the bounty hunter walks off. He don't like it, but he walks off. And then she's looking around and everything. Then the bounty hunter comes back. He gets to the car. He was like, you know what? He gets back out the car. He's got his weapon. And he just, the guy's like, Red, what are you doing? Because he unlocks the girl. She's escaping. He turns around and he just lights up everybody he can. And I'm like, well, he had to know that was like a suicide mission. So
yeah, I guess.
I don't know in that moment, but he let her.
Enough.
He let her go. Now she's trying to escape in the bounty hunter's car, but she ain't got the keys and whatever, and it won't start up. And it was funny to me because in these movies you're used to seeing people with turning the key, and the car is not going to crank and all that. She's pushing the button, and I was just like, oh,
and
not the push button to start.
So one of the things you seen from earlier in the film was that they could hotwire a car too.
Yeah.
Right, because Bob had skills and stuff. He knew the technology.
But he had to have an old car because you can't do that with
but what
she
did, she just pressing that button, it's just going click, click,
nothing.
Click. Like the old car. I don't know how young people are and if they've noticed, but the old car is gonna make a sound when you turn the ignition.
At
like
least
it's gonna sound like it's trying to do something. This
you don't
thing
get
is
a
just
thing.
Like click, click, click.
So then when she realizes she can't escape in the car, she gets a weapon out the vehicle, and she is looking like she got experience with the weapons, okay? And she goes where everybody has been basically gunned down, and she gets the keys out of the bounty hunter's pocket or whatever, and then she goes back to the car and she just burns off or whatever. At the same time that this has all had gone down, Tim, the guy who the Christmas Club, Adventure Club people sent to take care of Lockjaw, sees Lockjaw driving, and he signals him to pull over. He's, not to pull over, but to roll his window down because they're on a highway and they're in both lanes now, side by side. And as soon as he rolls his window down, he shoots Lockjaw in the face. And then, of course, he veers and goes off the ravine. Now, shortly after this, Bob sees this happening. Bob is like, oh my gosh, when he sees, he didn't see it occur, but when he comes up, he sees the skid marks and he thinks his daughter is there with Lockjaw in the car.
Yeah, because he tried to take out Lockjaw earlier, right? Mm-hmm. He saw when Willa came out the building with Lockjaw, he tried to snipe him and he missed.
so then he goes down there and everything. He sees Lockjaw. Lockjaw looks like he's pretty much dead or whatever. He doesn't see Willa, and he goes up and he's screaming for Willa. He's saying the code words and everything. So maybe if she's hiding, she'll come out, but no Willa or whatever. So, next thing we know, we look up and Tim, the guy from the adventure club, the Christmas adventure club, is now chasing Willa. And this is where that cinematography of those hills was just amazing, because the thing is, the way the dips were in the hills, if the car was in the dip and you were not at the top of the next hill, you couldn't see. So it's like they disappear when they go down in that dip very low. And so it was just building the tension because you didn't know if that person was gaining on you. You can't see the car. It gives moments of where you're invisible to them and they're invisible to you, which was good for the maneuvering. So he's chasing her and everything. It looks like a roller coaster ride. Then Bob winds up getting behind them because Bob figures out what's going on. He's driving, and the suspense was so great. And Willa decides, okay, obviously she's not going to just win this with this guy chasing her. So what she does is she stops the car, leaves it in the road, and hops out with her gun, and she's posted up on the side behind a rock. And Tim doesn't see the car, and he slams into the back of the car. When Tim slams into this car, he hops out and is going to start, looking around, but she's got the gun on him. And she's like, what is the code word? What is the code? And he don't know the code. He started trying to talk. She started taking him out. She just straight out. I was like, see, that's what I'm saying. See, because if he don't know the word, he got to go. And that's what she did. So she took care of him. And then after she took care of him, then she hears Bob pulling up, but she doesn't know it's him, another car. And she's like, oh man, somebody else is coming. So he's coming, but she's behind this rock and she can't see, him coming. He's got his weapon out. And I'm like, please don't let them shoot each other. And so when she finally sees that it's her father, she's asking him, for the code words. And he's like, it's me. It's your dad. It's me. And she's like, who are you? And I was just like, man, this is just so good by this point in the movie because we are just gripping the seat. And finally, he gives the answer and he's like, I'm your dad. I'm your, and he gives her the answer and she realizes it's him and she, goes and hugs him and whatever. And then they get in the car and they ride off together. So then the next thing we see in the road, and this is not supposed to be funny, but it was, but Lockjaw with a half blown off face is walking down the road because he done survived and he just looking crazy as hell. And then the next scene, we see him in front of the Christmas Adventure Club and his face is all jacked up and he's talking about they're like, well, wanting him to address his interracial relationship or, having this child. And he tells this story that is just so crazy. And he's just like, I think that she took advantage of me and whatever. And he said he was raped in reverse. He said he was drugged and she employed deception and that his brain wasn't working and he was unconscious. And they were like, well, how do you know anything happened if you were unconscious? And he was like, well, when I woke up, there was a residue of interaction. It was like the people who were in the theater with us were just like laughing audibly at this point. And then he's like, she was a sperm thief, a semen demon. And it was just too much. It was just too much in that moment. But you did kind of need that. So they were like, all right, we believe you or whatever. But before that, though, he tells them, he's like, well, the thing is, she desired the power of my mind and my body and all of this and that. And it was like, come on. Yeah, right, buddy. So then he's invited to join the Christmas club. And they're like, oh, you're going to come down to Suite 55. This is your office. It's amazing view. And then they put him in that office. And it's beautiful. There's nothing in there though. And then he's like, oh, I forgot the key. I need your key. So let me go get your key. The guy who had shown him to the office, he closes the door and then he's just sitting there. He's so happy. Lockjaw is like, I finally got where I've been trying to go. And he sees this beautiful view and he thinks he done made it. And then the next thing you hear is like this hissing sound. And you look up at the vent and, some gas is coming in. But I told you that I said they about the gas chamber. That's what he's in. And that's what happens. And so he winds up, getting knocked off by them. And quickly, some men in some white suits come to dispose of the body. So then we see the kind of debrief between Bob and his daughter. And he confesses to his daughter that he wanted to protect her from just everything that the mother and that he did, all of their backlash. And he said he wanted to be the one she came to for help, and he don't want to lie to her about anything anymore. And then he pulls out this letter from her mother. And the mother is like, "Dear Charlene," and then she says a bunch of stuff, but basically she said that she pretended to be strong her whole life and asked the question of like, is it too late for us? Are you happy? Do you have love? Will you try and change the world like me? And says, we failed, but maybe you will not.
Yeah.
And I think about you daily, all of that. And I wish I had been strong for the both of us. And I know someday when it is safe, you will find me. And then Willa goes and hugs her father, and then she is working with the French 75, and she's on the
Was it the French 75?
well, she's working with some new group. She working with somebody. Maybe it's not the French 75, but she is a revolutionary, and she's going to, get out, go and do the work of the revolutionary. And he tells her to be careful, and she's like, I won't. And that's how the movie ends. So what did you think?
Of the movie?
Yeah, like after all, I mean, because we kind of went through
I think it was good.
a really detailed thing. But
I think it was pretty good. But I just think that it shows, like, in these times how you need to be ready, right? You need to have plans and stuff. But I've been trying to tell people that I know over the past few years about encryption. We see what's going on with these social media sites and everything in communication. Encryption is the only way. And you can do it personally. Encryption is the only way that a message cannot be read as of yet. Intercepted. Yeah. That's just it.
And it just made me think there were just really so many things that were mentioned. And I just was speechless by the end of the movie.
I think they were kind of like poking fun too at like the revolutionaries and stuff too, because, everybody have these ideals and stuff, right? And then, what always happens, sometimes you get a family, you have kids and stuff like that. And then times change, and then you're kind of more conservative than progressive or revolutionary, right? So you have all these things going on, but you still have those base level ideals that needs to get passed on.
Yeah. And, I want to go back to what Katie Walsh said. This is another excerpt from her article in the Chicago Tribune. She said, one battle after another is a tale of epic scope about the many shadowy networks and secretive factions that undergird our society while hiding in plain sight. Anderson introduces not just the French 75, but an underground railroad for Latino immigrants run by Sensei Sergio, a powerful white supremacist secret society, a racist backwood militia, a convent of cannabis cultivating nuns, all pulling the strings behind the scenes of American life. But Anderson balances the sprawling conspiracy-minded aspects of this yarn with the intimate father-daughter story, which is the heart of the matter. And, it was so well stated because the reason that you care to do all of this stuff is because of, I think, love and a sense of justice, right?
All right. And it was about the future, right? But that future is different once you have the kid too, right? So then he just becomes a parent. Now I just have to look out for this person to make this person where I was, right? So even, he goes and he talks to her teacher and stuff. And he's just basically trying to be like, so what are y'all teaching up in here? You know what I'm saying? What sort of history? Y'all teaching the real history, the fake history, but kind of half-assed at it, right?
Yeah.
Not 100% there like when he was in the actual fight, right? But that's basically a fight for the young to do and whether or not those torches have been passed. And it was kind of just thrust upon his daughter, right? Like many people, you find yourself all of a sudden having to at least have the base ideology there, right? But you find yourself thrust into this position where now it's time to act. You got to do something.
Yeah. And what did you think about the end of the film? Did you think the ending was good or like you expected?
Yeah, I didn't expect that lockjaw part. They should have just left them on side the road, probably. but I think it has to show to the kind of values of that group, that he was a part of trying to join, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like the end of it, and they got, they really got into the allyship of, not even strictly allies, but using each other's groups as tools and using people for certain things, and not that it's all in a strictly negative way.
Right. Right. But to the idea of allies in the revolution, French 75, they were multicultural. I don't think that any one group is, especially the ones that are being subjugated, are going to make it out of the stuff that is cooking up while just trying to stay only with your one group.
Yeah. So what I do think about with this is like the Weather Underground. That's just the first thing that comes to mind when, this comes up.
As far as the ending is concerned, there was part of me is like, I really wanted to see the mother and daughter just see each other again. But the thing I wasn't certain of is whether or not Perfidia was still alive, because we saw her go to Mexico, but then there's a point where, did Lockjaw hunt her down and kill her? Did Lockjaw actually kill her? Was she alive? When was the letter actually written? Because he talks about that I've been holding this for a couple years, but I don't know if that's because it came in the last couple years or because it came early and he held it until she was old enough.
I don't know. I think they would have showed it if Lockjaw had taken her out.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, but I'm just contemplating that more so in this moment. At the end of the film, I was thinking she was alive, and I just wanted to get that catharsis of that she saw her daughter. But then I started to interpret it a different way, because as soon as she reads the letter and she goes and she hugs her father, here we are in this moment where she knows that this is not her biological father. But there's another question. Did he know? Did he know?
I don't know.
And the film doesn't really give us a whole lot there. But I think that maybe it didn't matter. Do you think she was openly with other people besides him too? I don't know, because she was very much kind of like the way we would imagine a hippie in a sense, like a free love kind of, person. So if that was their attitude, then
they should have explored it more.
Yeah. And it maybe didn't matter.
One-sided. It just looked like, look at these black women acting like this.
Well, and then I got to talk about that. In the beginning, the trade-off of the person who Perfidia was in this film was just, I couldn't deal. Because you had two black women who were acting just wild as hell. And then you had DeAndrea's character who was looking at the other two like, but she was all, okay, I can't say she was older. We know that the actors are there's a gap in the age there. So I'm going to say I feel like she was definitely more mature and probably more mature by age as well. Although Regina Hall, I think she's about 55 or 56. She does look younger than her age to me. She looks good. Yeah. But
so you had this whole idea too of like, all right, the whole idea is she's labeled as a rat. And now that she's a rat, then she loses everything that she done and worked for. Like, she's done more than anybody, and probably a lot of those people who come after and call this person a rat. Oh, she's a rat. But she's done things that you would never do or never even think to do and accomplish more than most people, right, in that movement.
Yeah.
So that's the whole part that's just kind of strange, too.
I don't know. Like we would need more time to just dig into that, which I would really love to be able to do too, because this film deserves more analysis. Yeah. And we can't even get into like the symbolism, the names, the name choices, all of that stuff. But these films like this just really make me kind of think about where we are. It reminds me a little bit of Leave the World Behind, not because the crisis in the film is right there, but because of the question about groups and who you're going to click with, who you're going to work with. How well does your group work? Are you organized? Are you ready? All of these questions. So, but this was an amazing film. I'm sure that it's going to be nominated for some stuff.
We'll see.
But
if you made it this far, type be careful in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out one of the videos that's on the screen right now. And also be sure to visit axiom.app, where you can find all of our recent videos in one place with links to them back on YouTube. And you can also buy our merch there too.